I've got 99 problems, and I'm ready to take on some more. Not my own problems, of course, other people's problems. Which is why I can handle binging all of Love Island US and Love Island UK without throwing the remote at my TV. It's not like I like to see people suffer or anything, except maybe on Love Island. I just really want to help them out. Like, if Serena could have just communicated honestly and openly and told Cordell that she liked him, then maybe Cordell would have stopped seeing Day away sooner. And if Aaron would have just taken responsibility and apologized to Kaylor for showering with Daniela instead of yelling at her, maybe they all could have moved on. But sometimes, problems are easier to solve from an outside perspective. Whether they're facing Love Island-style relationship drama, or a struggle with mental illness, or a big life change like a death or a new baby, or a new group of Islanders from Casa Amor, sometimes people need a little help. So even though self-reflection and open, honest communication might make reality TV a whole lot more boring, in the real world, it can make a huge difference. So if you've got 99 problems, and an insatiable need to help others is one of them, I've got the career for you. Hi, I'm Deja Fitzgerald, and I'm a PhD candidate in counseling psychology. This is Study Hall, and here's how to become a therapist. At its heart, a career as a mental health therapist or a mental health counselor is all about helping others work through and prevent emotional, behavioral, and other psychological problems. But just like Kaylor's got 99 problems and Aaron's gaslighting is at least a solid 50 of them, there are about 99 different ways to do that. Like psychodynamic therapists work on examining your thoughts and feelings, but behavioral therapists focus on changing how you respond to those thoughts and feelings. And those are just a couple examples. Therapists use all different kinds of techniques, and they all have different kinds of specialties too. Like couples therapists or family therapists specialize in family dynamics and romantic relationships, and should probably be on call at Casa Amor. Child and adolescent therapists can support you through the tumultuous journey that is growing up, while school psychologists help support students by working with them, their parents, and their teachers. And some therapists specialize in different mental health struggles like addiction, depression, or trauma, or big life transitions like grief and loss. And even the same kinds of therapists can work in really different environments. Lots of therapists of all different types work in private practice, where they run their own business. Private practice therapy is a little bit like freelancing, in that therapists can book sessions with clients on a case-by-case basis, which gives them a lot of control over their schedules, clientele, and fees, at the expense of some reliability. Lots of other therapists work at agencies, which can be public or private organizations like hospitals, schools, community health centers, or social service agencies. Agency therapists often work together to orchestrate care for lots of clients, which can give them more reliable pay, support from other professionals, and sometimes employer benefits like healthcare. But they also have less control over who they serve and when. Obviously, your specialty and where you can work can really change what kind of experience you'll have as a therapist. And it can also change how much you get paid. Salaries can be hard to estimate because they can vary so widely. But as of 2024, agency-affiliated therapists in the US make an average of about $48,000 a year, while private practice therapists make closer to $96,000 on average. But wherever and however they do it, therapists work hard to create a safe, understanding, supportive environment that helps their clients feel comfortable talking about whatever it is they need to talk about, whether that's a long-term mental health concern or a short-term problem, or why Dami and India couldn't just put their pride aside and get together already. So if you're ready to bust down the doors of Casa Amor and do some real healing, become a therapist, let's get into it. You don't need a formal education to know that screaming, crying, and gaslighting are probably not super effective ways to solve your problems and lead a happy, balanced life. But unfortunately, that natural know-how isn't quite enough to make you into a professional therapist. Much like the underpaid PAs who drive truckloads of avocados to the villa each day, professional therapists need a license. And for that, you'll pretty much always need to start with a bachelor's degree. If you haven't done your undergrad yet, you might think about getting a bachelor's in a field like psychology, which will set you up with a lot of basic mind and behavior knowledge you'll need for the rest of your therapist training. Another option could be to get your bachelor's in a field like sociology, where you'll learn more about human behavior in the context of social interactions. But if you've already got a bachelor's in biology or English, or if you really want to spend your formative years learning about Love Island and cinema studies, never fear, there's no one specific undergrad major that you'll have to have, because you're gonna have to hit the books again, this time at grad school. Professional therapists in the US are almost always required to get their master's degree. Most therapists go for a Master of Counseling, or a Master of Science in Counseling, or maybe a Master's in Marriage and Family Therapy. Exact titles differ across schools, but programs with therapy or counseling in their titles are a good bet because they're often specifically designed to lead to professional therapy licensure. They include certain required classes and often things like internships and practicums. Well, you'll work with a licensed therapist, usually in some kind of agency, hospital, or community counseling center, and even begin to see your own clients under supervision. But the choices don't stop with your master's. To really become a professional therapist, you'll have to get a state-approved license. If you've ever looked for a therapist for yourself, you might have noticed that they come with a certifiable alphabet soup of different letters after their names. And that's because while all professional therapists have to have some kind of license, they're not all the same ones. Like if you already know you want to work in schools, you might want to go for a license in school psychology or an LSP. But if you're confident you want to spend your career helping relationships between couples, families, and reality TV show contestants, you might become a licensed marriage and family therapist, or LMFT. Or if you're more interested in individuals than marriages or families, you might think about becoming a licensed professional counselor, or LPC. LPCs tend to focus their practice more on a single person, helping figure out patterns in their thoughts and feelings and behaviors that impact their lives. So if you want to help Luke T figure out who he even is after that breakup with Shawnice, the LPC might be for you. Though lots of states have a couple other kinds of therapy license, LSPs, LMFTs, and LPCs make up a lot of therapists in the US. And there are also all licenses that are specific to therapy, designed to make sure you're ready to provide that kind of care to clients. So if you know you want to be a therapist, one of these 3 licenses might be the most straightforward path. All of these licenses require therapists to complete supervised clinical hours. That means after you graduate with your master's, you'll still have to spend a while giving therapy to clients under the supervision of a fully licensed therapist. Those requirements vary state by state, but in general, you'll have to complete something like 2,000 to 4,000 supervised clinical hours. And after all that, you'll still have to take an exam to finally get your hands on that sweet, sweet license. Getting your therapy license is a pretty big time commitment. From undergrad to licensure can take nearly a decade. So more time than it takes to watch all 37 episodes in a season of Love Island, but not by much. But once you've done all that, you're usually good to go. You might still have to pay some dues and do some paperwork, but you've made it to the final envelope ceremony, if you will. Except instead of being forced to make a life-altering relationship and financial decision on TV, you get your LSP or LPC or LMFT, and you get to start doing the job you've always wanted. But like we said, there are a lot of different kinds of licenses you can get to become a therapist, and some of them aren't in therapy at all. In fact, a lot of therapists are licensed in a different field altogether: social work. If you've ever seen a therapist called an LCSW, this is what that's all about. LCSWs are licensed in clinical social work, and they're trained to help vulnerable people and communities cope with problems in their everyday lives, specifically focusing on their clients' mental, emotional, and behavioral problems. If that sounds familiar, it should. The work that clinical social workers do is often really similar to the work of LPCs and LMFTs, while LCSWs often work for government programs, allowing them to reach groups and individuals who might not have access to therapy otherwise. They can also work in private practice or in agencies, and treat clients for a variety of things, just like people with licenses in therapy. The big difference is that social workers training focuses more on social welfare, a system of organized supports that helps make sure all people have stuff like food and healthcare and a good enough internet connection to stream Love Island, which we all know is the key factor in mental health. So LCSWs tend to learn a little more about social behavior and social systems, and how to treat people in the context of the world they're living in. So if you're more interested in the sociological side of things, or you really want to help out people who maybe wouldn't get help otherwise, an LCSW might be a great choice. And the process of getting it isn't all that different from one of those other therapy licenses. Instead of counseling or therapy, you'll want to look for a master's program in social work, which will usually involve some combination of classes and field work, just like a therapy master's program. After graduation, you'll be eligible for a Licensed Master of Social Work, or LMSW, a provisional license meaning you're on your way to becoming a full-fledged social worker and can get started seeing clients with supervision. You'll then go on to complete some supervised field work, which might include stuff like performing assessments and running group or individual therapy sessions. And after that, you'll usually do an exam in social work this time to make sure you're ready to roll. In 2024, LCSWs make an average of about $58,000 a year, but just like like with other therapy licenses, that number can be higher or lower depending on where you work and how much experience you have. Getting an LCSW isn't easier or harder than an LPC or an LMFT. You still have to have a state-approved license in order to practice therapy. It's just a different path with a different focus that can give you a different perspective on your work. But if you want a path that is definitely harder because you didn't have enough problems before, you might consider becoming a licensed clinical or counseling psychologist instead. Like the other professionals we've talked about, clinical and counseling psychologists focus on providing care to people, but they also spend a lot of time learning about psychology in general, including doing research in the field. And instead of a master's in therapy, counseling, or social work, clinical and counseling psychologists have doctorate degrees, usually either a PsyD, which has more of a clinical focus, or a PhD in psychology, which will focus more on research. So if you want to spend your summer reading 787 articles to put together a research proposal, I can definitely recommend this route. But do you? Really? Just anyone? And this means even more time in school. Getting that PsyD or PhD after your name almost always takes 4 years or more. I'm excited. A lot of that time will be spent on research, so even though you'll still practice therapy skills, especially in a PsyD program, you'll also spend a lot of hours reading articles, conducting studies, and writing papers and grants. Unfortunately, I don't think binging reality TV shows counts towards your degree. Yeah. Because of all the research, doctoral-level therapists, especially clinical psychologists, are often super experienced with specific diagnoses and types of therapy. So, depending on their specialty, they can end up treating people with more severe and persistent mental health issues, including eating disorders, schizophrenia, or BPD, than your typical LPC. But just like with an LPC or an LCSW, clinical psychologists still have to complete about 2,000 hours of supervised practice, and some other licensure requirements to actually practice therapy. But that extra time in school and those extra letters after your name can give you more opportunities. In addition to working with clients, clinical or counseling psychology PhDs can become college professors or supervise other therapists. And PsyDs and PhDs also tend to make a little bit more money than therapists with other kinds of licenses. As of 2024, the average clinical psychologist in the US makes something like $100,000 a year, as opposed to around $75,000 for other kinds of therapists. And the cool thing is, you can always get more education. Even if you start out with a master's program, you can always go back for a higher degree later. And however you get there, there are lots of places you can start out your career. By the time you're a licensed therapist, you'll have done a whole lot of supervised practice with licensed counseling providers. So you might be able to snag your first job at one of those agencies where you trained, or use the people you worked with there as references to get a position somewhere else. You can also research jobs on your own. Counseling agencies, group practices, and public service agencies like hospitals or community health centers will often post jobs on regular job boards like Indeed, but a lot of them might have their own job boards too. So if there's a particular program you're interested in working for, you can check out their website to see if they have any openings. Even if you want to go into private practice eventually, a lot of therapists think it can be easier to start out your therapy career by working at an agency or group practice, because they'll give you important experience, along with a reliable income and a little more supervision in your early career. Plus, you don't have to hustle to build up your own client base and reputation from scratch. Then you might think about transitioning slowly from an agency to private practice and making the switch when you're sure you're ready. But don't worry if the place you start out doesn't suit you. You can always explore different kinds of practice and specialties until you find one that feels right. But maybe you're not ready to commit just yet. Solving everybody's problems on Love Island is a great hobby, but I guess I'll admit it can't totally prepare you for life as a therapist. So if you want to test the waters a little bit before you jump in the therapy infinity pool, there are a couple ways you could try out the whole helping people thing. Lots of community health centers and hospital mental health programs hire non-clinical staff, like program assistants who interact with clients without being their official therapists. These kinds of jobs usually only require a bachelor's degree, so they can be a great way to see if you like that kind of work without going through the whole licensure rigmarole. You might also consider volunteering for crisis hotlines, which provide you with some basic training and can give you lots of experience working with vulnerable populations and talking people through some of life's biggest problems. And if you really dig that kind of thing, you might even look for a job as a crisis counselor. Those folks work for organizations that help people who need immediate mental health support. And in some states, you can do that work without any sort of degree, as long as you complete a training program. Although at least an associate's or a bachelor's can help you get hired. And a lot of therapists' work is listening and supporting their clients, so you can also pay attention to how you feel when your friends and family confide in you or come to you for advice. Of course, once you become a licensed therapist, treating a friend or relative as a client is a big therapy no-no. But if late night heart-to-hearts with your BFF about our childhood trauma leave you filled with more than just a pint of Ben & Jerry's, that's a pretty good sign that this career might be right for you. And here's another sign. The field needs you. Tons of people in the US are looking for therapy. And between 2022 and 2032, employment prospects for clinical, counseling, and school psychologists are projected to grow by 6%, faster than the average for other professions. And all those folks out there looking for mental health support means there is a big, bright future for anyone who wants to pursue a career as a therapist. So if you love Love Island, helping people, as much as I do, the therapy world could really use you. Pursuing a career as a therapist can really change your clients' lives, as well as your own. And in this problem-filled world, we could all use a therapist to listen to us, and a big, comfy therapy couch to cry on. And also, when you're yelling at the Love Islanders on your TV, you can tell them you're a licensed professional. So they'll have to finally listen to you. Serena, please. If you want to learn more about undergrad major options, check out our Fast Guide series where we dive into popular college majors. And check out GoStudyHall.com for more resources. If you want to help us out, give this video a like, tell us about your experience with therapy, and smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. See you next time.